Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the episode of Just Say Guay. I'm your host, George Guay. Today I'm joined by Cal Kiefiuk, who's the newest member of the Providence College men's ice hockey team. You may have seen that he was just announced as a transfer to the team just a couple days ago. Cal, thanks for coming on the show, and welcome to Providence.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so how's this all been? I know that you probably picked your school for your transfer maybe not too long ago, but obviously it was officially announced by the team. What's this all been like? You're training for an upcoming graduate season with a new team. How do you feel?
It's been good. Kind of made the decision kind of as the season ended last year. And then we've been back on campus. I've been here since the July 5th training with the team and stuff like that. So everything's been going good so far.
Yeah, and how do you like the new environment? I know you're coming from UMass, a school that's not in a big city like Providence. You're in a much smaller school. What's that been adjusting like?
It's been pretty easy. Obviously, there's a little more to do around Providence than there was at UMass, which is kind of nice. But other than that, I think the coming into the locker room, stuff like that, the guys have been great, kind of made it an easy transition. So it's been pretty smooth.
Yeah, it's such a great place like Providence. You're gonna have a great time as a player and a student. So just take us through where you're from. You should get to know you as a new hockey player on the team, but where you're from and what was it like growing up in that hockey culture?
From Macomb, Michigan. It's a little suburb right outside of Detroit. So growing up there, it's obviously the AAA youth hockey is pretty big in Detroit with the major programs like Honey Baked Caesars, CompuWare, Victory Honda, Bell Tire. It's pretty competitive. I grew up playing for Honey Baked. Was there for about 3 years before I left for the USHL. Other than the day to day, it's pretty competitive, and I think it's kind of a little different nowadays. But when I was growing up, we were in the HPHL, which we had the three teams from Chicago, Chicago Mission, Team Illinois, and the Chicago Young Americans, which I don't know how many of those are still around. I know the Mission is, but I think CY and TI might have changed names or something like that. But it was a lot of travel. Obviously, we drive around Chicago every other weekend, and they would come to us. But growing up there, I mean, the hockey, it's pretty abundant for good places to play in Detroit. So it was good.
Yeah, and you have that great college culture and pro. I mean, not many cities can say that they have that, especially in college hockey where there's not too many big cities for the sport. I was just wondering what your recruiting process is like. You ended up at UMass, but I see in college hockey a lot. There's a thing where a lot of players want to go where they grew up. You see it in Minnesota. Guys like Brock Faber, they wanted to go to Minnesota the day they were born. Brett Berard with Providence. You see a lot of Boston guys. They want to stick around in the Boston schools. How did you end up at UMass?
I was committed to Michigan pretty young. I committed when I was 15 or 16 years old. And then there was Red Berenson was the head coach at the time. And throughout the whole process, he kind of was honest, and it was pretty obvious that he wasn't going to be there by the time I got there. So I knew that there was going to be a coaching change before I got there, but we just didn't know who it was going to be. And then kind of when it all went down and everything that happened, just didn't really see eye to eye with what they had planned, the new coaches at Michigan. So reopened my recruitment in I think April of my third year in the USHL. And then Benny Barr, who's now the head coach at Maine, when he was at UMass, before he was there, he was at Western Michigan, and he recruited me pretty heavily there to Western. So I had a pretty good relationship with him. And then so obviously some players, like had a good relationship with Zach Jones, a good friend of mine. We've been playing against each other since we were, 8 years old, I think was the first time we played against each other. So we kind of grew up playing against each other. And then there were some other guys on the team, Mitchell Chafee, guys like that kind of made it an easy decision for me to kind of go out east. I know when I was younger, I was dead set on staying close to home, didn't really want to leave. But I think after I made the decision and kind of moved out here, I've kind of really enjoyed it. And I think it was really a good decision for me in the end.
Yeah, and obviously at UMass, you won the national championship. We'll get into that. I was just wondering, how exciting was it to be at UMass at the time? Because I remember when I was a student, I was at Providence when Cale Makar made that run. A lot of people thought, oh, Cale's, going to go to the NHL. Maybe UMass won't be back next year. We'll see what happens. And you guys had a great season before you won the national championship. And I was just wondering, as the COVID shutdown happened, going into winning a national championship, how does the preparing for that work? Staying on top of each other, knowing that, hey, guys, we can win a national championship. We got to get after it every day so that when the season comes, if there is one, we'll be one of the best teams in the country. How did that all work for you guys?
It was obviously Cal left before my freshman year, so when I got there, he was gone. But I think going into that year, there was a lot of scrutiny against us, saying UMass isn't going to be the same without Cal. But we still had John Leonard, Mitchell Chafee, guys that were really good players still. And then we brought in obviously Zach Jones. He was in my class, who obviously kind of ripped it up for a couple of years, but Mark Del Gaizo was there. There was a lot of guys that were still there that were a part of that team the year before when they lost in the championship. That when we came back for my freshman year, those guys were all like really, really hungry. And I think right off the hop, we went back in July. They were, it was like full fledged go. There was no easing into things. Those guys that were on the team the year before were really hungry. And then obviously we had a good year that year, but COVID kind of shut it down. And we were heading into playoffs. I think we had like a 1 seed going into hockey's playoffs or something like that. So we had home ice advantage, and to have that shut down, it kind of left a little bit of a bitter taste in our mouth for the guys that were coming back. I know we thought we had a shot to kind of do something big my freshman year as a group, and then to kind of have it shut down kind of hurt a little bit. So when we went back my sophomore year, we didn't really know how things were going to look. Obviously, it was COVID, so we weren't allowed on campus all summer, which was new. We were usually there training. But they did a really good job. We'd meet like once a week over Zoom as a team. I think that kind of helped with like getting to know guys, because usually the summer is really big for kind of building those relationships heading into the year, kind of create those bonds early. So we didn't have that, but I think the guys that were all on the team the year before when it shut down, and then even the guys that were on the team when they lost, they didn't get that shot that next year when they were really hungry. So I think it just kind of left us all, ready to go. And I think heading into the year, we weren't really sure what we were going to look like because we lost Leonard and Chafee. But we had those seniors that have been there. They were there from the beginning, where their first year, I think they only won 5 games all year. So to see them, they kind of had the whole transformation of UMass to where it is. And just all year, we just kind of didn't worry about anything but ourselves. And with the COVID year, it was kind of tough, obviously, because you'd have games shut down on the weekend, where we just kind of had the mindset of it's up to us. We did what we could to stay healthy all year and kind of deal with the COVID and the not having fans. We kind of created our own energies in certain ways, and it just kind of kept building and building. And then by the time we hit playoffs, I think as a group, we were kind of like a machine, just rolling, and everybody kind of bought into their own role and kind of thrived off that. And it was a competitive environment every day at the rink, and just kind of kept rolling it through. And then we weren't really sure what was going to happen heading into regionals and stuff like that. But I know when we played Duluth in the semis, the guys that were the juniors and seniors that were on the team, when they lost to Duluth, they were all in the locker room. It was like before the game, they were like, this is our time. They were kind of ready to go again at them. And I think that was a heavy game back and forth. And then kind of going into St. Cloud after we beat Duluth, we just kept our confidence. And I think the game, we had some good bounces. Obviously, they rang one off the bar, I think like 30 seconds in. But we just kind of stuck with it all year. I think we handled the adversity of the COVID and everything really well. And I think that was kind of a big part to our success.
Yeah, you guys clearly handled it. And I think it was interesting to see once that season started across college hockey, you could kind of see what teams were ready to go when it started, and you guys were clearly ready. It was kind of an insane season to have, no fans like professional sports, but at the end of the day, you guys also had to go to school. It wasn't like pros where you could just go home and hide and stay away from COVID. I give you guys a lot of credit for being able to do that. What was it like just to finally win the national championship, and just after everything that happened and what it meant for UMass, the first national championship? I know for a lot of guys, I actually interviewed Carson Gusevich a few years back, right after that you guys won it. And I think he actually had to drive to Pittsburgh after a COVID test to compete for the national championship. Like it took everything to get over the finish line. How did it all feel when it was done?
It was a great feeling. I think the whole year as a whole was kind of a drag. We got to school, I think, late August, and you weren't allowed to see your families. You weren't allowed to go home. We didn't get to go home for any holidays. We were kind of there, and you weren't allowed to hang out with anybody but your team. So I think that kind of helped with the way that our team kind of came together. It was a really close group. But once it kind of all ended and it was over, it was just pure joy. I know like the coaching staff and the seniors and that had been there for the whole transformation from when they only won 5 games their freshman year to finally win that. I think the biggest thing was those guys kind of the rest of us kind of were most excited for those guys because they'd kind of been through it all, and for them to finally reach that end goal. And I know the coaches the same thing. They had a lot of turnover and that they had to deal with while they kind of took over, and to finally get that done after that year, it was big. It was a really good feeling. And then obviously with the Carson getting and then the other guys that had COVID, they had to drive the day of. Heading into the Frozen Four, me and another guy on our team were battling some injuries that we probably weren't ready to come back. But that semifinal game, we obviously lost Carson and a couple bodies, so we kind of had to come in a little early, and it just it was everyone kind of next man up. We had that mentality all year where if somebody was hurt, somebody had COVID, it was next man up mentality. And it was a trust in the room that no matter who was in that lineup, they were going to do their job that night. So to finally get it done in the end, it was huge.
Yeah, for sure. And, obviously a story I always like to hear that program and that team is just how when Bobby Trevino was being recruited at the time, Coach Carville got there and was really, really trying to build something and saw it through, and you guys won. And I've seen the videos. You guys were celebrities on campus forever after coming back. I mean, that must have been amazing. So you play a couple more years at UMass. You win another Hockey East championship with a thrilling game against UConn at the Garden. I mean, obviously to have them in the mix in Hockey East now is unbelievable as well. At what point after this season did you think that transferring was most likely going to happen?
I think pretty early. It just kind of, you spend 4 years in a place, and maybe some things go good, some things go bad. Obviously, I had a lot of injuries in my time at UMass, and we just kind of thought they had a lot of turnover heading into last year. We had 13 new guys, freshmen, stuff like that. So it was just I thought it was a good decision for me, is just to get a change of scenery. I feel like sometimes if I get comfortable in a spot, I'll get complacent. So I thought it would be the best idea for me to kind of look somewhere else. And then obviously Coach Lehman recruited me before I went to UMass. So it's a pretty easy transition to make the decision to come here.
Yeah, and I like that answer because I think when you see like a freshman transfer or a sophomore, it's like, hey, it seems like they don't like it here. But I think obviously with these COVID transfers, just like you said, the change of scenery, and I think obviously you picked a great school to come to for that 5th year. What do you like about this team? Because they did lose some key seniors, guys like Patrick Moynihan, Parker Ford, Max Crozier, some guys that are in the pros right now. Obviously, Patrick's going to have a good year at Notre Dame this year. What do you like about the guys coming back? Because I really like Philip Svedback. I think after a strong freshman year, I think he could be one of the best goalies in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously they lost some key pieces, but they also had a lot of players come back with the Cam McDonald, Jamie Engelbert, Poisson came back for his senior year, Duran, Yoder. I think as well as we lost a lot, I think they brought a lot back. And then obviously I think bringing in, I think Luke Chris is a top-notch college defenseman. I think he kind of showed that at Brown, where he might not have had a lot of pieces around him, but he found a way to succeed every year. So I think as much as we've lost guys, I think they brought in a good group to kind of fill those roles that they did lose. And I think after last year, where they kind of were right there in Hockey East at the Garden, I think it left the guys that did come back pretty hungry. That was pretty evident from the first day we walked in July. It was kind of right to work. And for me, like coming back for a 5th year, it's pretty normal. I kind of had that mindset all years at UMass, where right when you get there in July, it's go time. There's not really an easing in portion, which it's the same thing that happened here. And I think the freshmen we brought in this year, they were right on top of it every day, pushing in the gym and stuff like that. Those guys were ready to work from day one. So I'm excited for the year. I think we got a group that can do something kind of special. And I know those guys that were on the team last year that returned, they're pretty hungry to kind of get back at it.
Yeah, and that's the positive thing about a tough loss, whether it's like with UMass at the national championship or losing at the Garden on such a big stage. You know what it took to got there, and if a lot of guys are coming back, you guys are coming in. Why can't we get back? So I think that's obviously a positive thing going forward. I was just wondering, because you are in the Hockey East Conference all this time, what did you like about playing at Providence? Maybe what you saw around campus in your brief time, maybe on the bus. Is there anything that you noticed that maybe helped your decision?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Lehman kind of recruited me before, so I was pretty familiar with everything around camp, stuff like that. But coming in as a visitor, when I was with UMass, it was always a tough place to play. It's a smaller rink. I think the fans are kind of right on top of you. It's loud. It's a good environment. I'm a little excited to be on the other side of things now, because I know it was a little bit of a struggle sometimes coming in here as a visiting team. But I think I'm excited to play Schneider. I always loved the smallness. I think it's a perfect college hockey rink. I like how everything's kind of on top of you like that. The fans kind of hanging over on the bench, yelling at you and stuff like that all game. So I'm excited for that, and obviously ready to be on the other side of things come this year.
The school's happy to have you on the team. So, like I said, we talked about how the team got there last year to the Garden and is looking to get back and get over the hump and win a Hockey East championship, get to the tournament. You've been in that spot before. I know you won a national championship, but just in terms of Providence taking the next step, you know what it takes to win a Hockey East championship. What are you bringing to that group saying, hey guys, if there's anything that, I can do in terms of how to help with that process when it's time, I can be, a helpful person to give advice to the team?
I think I'm gonna, just kind of bring, obviously the guys that were here last year kind of know what it takes to get there. And then I think, being an older guy, it's when you get down to April and into the postseason, it gets kind of a little gritty, and it's almost like a second season. It's like it doesn't really matter what happened all year, but once you get to playoffs, it's almost like a fresh start. So I think it's just kind of staying focused. There's going to be ups and downs throughout the year, and it happens everywhere. And I know, this year there's going to be some times where there's going to be some struggle, definitely a little bit of adversity. And I'm just going to try to keep the guys calm and kind of focus on that part of it, where you can't win the season in October. But come April and stuff like that, you got to make sure you're ready to go and be kind of working like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think, you're coming to a team where they know how to handle that when things aren't going well. This team, had a tough middle of the season last year with a lot of 1-goal losses, and they stuck with it. The older guys knew what to do, and you saw what happened. So my last question has to do with college hockey in general this year. You've played against a lot of great players, made it to the NHL, draft picks from all the top schools in this area. How excited are you for this year? I don't know if you noticed, but, the number one American born drafted is going to player. Will Smith is going to BC this year. Macklin Celebrini, who's supposed to be the number one pick next year, is going to BU. A lot of great players going into Hockey East as well. Just how excited to be a part of this conference.
I am really excited. I think, being there for 4 years, when I was looking to go somewhere else, I didn't know if I was looking to change, just because I like how the parity in the league. I think, anybody can beat anybody any given night. It's you got to show up every night. There's no blowouts really, and if there is, it's kind of a fluke or somebody took a night off. Where every night's a close game. I think it's a tough league to score in. It's not easy. Obviously, there's a lot of great players, but I think I'm excited for the challenge. I like how, it's I like those tight games. I think those are exciting to play in and more fun, where if you look at like Big Ten and stuff like that, there's blowouts, every couple of nights, some big goal differentials, where I think Hockey East it's a tight league, and every night matters. And that's what I kind of am most excited about, is that, you can't really take a night off. And if you do, you're going to get, it's going to bite you, where you got to show up every night, because any given night, any team can win in this league.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, it's definitely changed so much. I don't know if you followed the conference, but when I was a freshman, when they were coming off the national championship, it was really kind of 4 teams. It was the BU, BC, Providence, and ULO was really up there in the standings. And there's just this big drop off. But I think at one point last year, the difference between 1 and 6 was only like 2.5 games, which is just crazy. But should be a good year. Cal, thank you so much for coming on the Just Say Goy Sports Show. we'll stay in touch and hope to see you at a game this year.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one.